Let's take a moment to really think about what's happening in the Middle East, especially in Syria. The Arab Spring and now the ongoing Syrian struggle have exposed just how weak these so called regimes really are. They claim to represent their people, but we've seen their weakness laid bare. Their armies, their security forces, even their leaders, they all crumble the moment their foreign backers pull away. It's a stark reminder of how fragile their grip on power truly is. Now, what's happening in Syria, the fall of Bashar al Assad's brutal regime, the release of innocent prisoners, the humiliation of the regime's enforcers fills the heart of every Muslim with joy. But here's the thing, we can't let that joy blind us to what's really going on behind the scenes. The US, the Zionist state, and their allies are already hard at work steering this outcome to serve their own interests under the guise of supporting the Syrian opposition. Take Turkey's role, for example. Its involvement in the Operation Deterrence of Aggression isn't as straightforward as it might seem. In reality, it aligns with nationalist and secular agendas which, let's be honest, ultimately overlap with American Zionist interests. The war on Gaza, the so-called Abraham Accords, the broader normalization project, it's all interconnected. The West and its allies are focused on one thing, weakening any ideas of jihad or resistance. They want nothing standing in the way of submission to their control. What's truly alarming is how easily they manipulate the narrative. They highlight the Islamic character of the Syrian uprising, leading many Muslims to believe that this is some kind of victory for Islam. But let's pause and ask ourselves, is that really the case? Do we really believe that the same state actors who allowed opposition forces to rise in Syria would ever permit a genuine Islamic revival to take root? The sad truth is, the reality is far more calculated. This isn't about establishing Islamic governance or uniting the Ummah. No, it's about tearing Syria apart, fragmenting it along sectarian lines, and making sure the Zionist entity stays secure and dominant. And it gets worse. This whole facade is carefully crafted to pacify the Muslim masses. They give the illusion of progress, but behind the scenes, they're steering events to serve colonial interests. This strategy isn't new. We saw it during the Arab Spring. They paraded Islamic symbols to mask their real agenda, reshaping Muslim lands into pliant secular states. It's a deliberate deception, a way to strip Muslims of their ability to resist while tightening external control over our lands and resources. Just listen to Netanyahu. He openly boasted that the fall of Assad creates opportunities for Israel, not because Assad was ever a threat to them, but because it fits their strategic goals, weakening regional rivals like Iran and ensuring Syria stays disarmed and divided. That's their priority. Now, let's not forget the human cost. Over 500,000 lives lost, millions displaced, countless others enduring torture and oppression. And yet, all these sacrifices are being hijacked to pave the way for yet another secular regime. And let's be clear, replacing one form of secularism with another, even if it's dressed up as democracy, is not what Islam calls for. So, where does the solution lie? It lies in uniting the Ummah under the banner of Islam, establishing a system of governance rooted in the Shariah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, indeed, the command is for none but Allah. We can't settle for anything less than uprooting these oppressive systems of kufr and replacing them with the just and divine laws of Islam. And for those in positions of influence, those leading the armed factions, they have an immense responsibility. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's words are a reminder. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, perhaps your Lord will destroy your enemy and grant you succession in the land. Then He will see how you act. So to those in positions of influence and those leading the armed factions, this is your chance for real change. Don't squander it by following the paths laid out by those who aim to divide and conquer us. The time for half measures and compromises is over. It's time for the people of Ash-Sham to finally live under Islam, just as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intended.